the whatever you may say there is a issue, we need to see what deep techs need. Deep techs means based on high technology. They need much more sustained funding. They need more hand holding, which is not happening at this level the way we want, because only 10% of our startups out of 1.47 lakhs are the deep tech startups. That 10% has to go up if we want our country to be an S&T powerhouse. So I hope many such deep tech startup policy will put in place. And needless to remind that we also have in the last budget, government has announced 1 lakh crore rupees corpus fund for R&D in private sector. Now this is again where CSIR and DSIR have a huge opportunity, because though it will be for R&D in private sector, but they will not have the bandwidth to do all this. And this is where they should tie up, and they will tie up with national labs and with academia. So again, I will say this is a very foresight of the government that it has brought out this corpus, 1 lakh crore corpus, and the ANRF which has been rolled out and so on. So I think I can see a bright future, and the challenge which Dr. Kalai Selvi has given to all of you again stands that you have to move on a faster scale, and I am sure all this will work out in the end of 2025, and when we meet in 2026, I will have to hear some more news from you. Congratulations once again. Happy birthday to DSIR. Happy birthday to CSIR, which is under DSIR. It's really like CSIR is a bigger brother or a smaller brother, I have not figured out, but it is one brother. And I think it's a great moment for India that the leadership is promoting science and technology at an unprecedented scale, whether be it is in space sector, whether it is in defense, whether it is in science or biotechnology, Bio E3 policy. All this what we hear in the last few years are making a dent in our S&T ecosystem in a very positive way. Thank you once again, and God bless you. Jai Hind.
So I just want to inform Ajay Suji and others. Now from CSIR this year, we have transferred a technology, and a commercial manufacturing has started in the state of Karnataka by a company, by a 1,200 crore company called Jitendra Pharmaceuticals Private Limited. So the catch point is paracetamol is indigenized. It is just because of CSIR NCL's technology. And CSIR NCL has transferred the technology to Jitendra Pharmaceuticals Private Limited. And this is going to be world's second zero liquid discharge and a continuous fully automated paracetamol manufacturing company, and India's first of its company in Karnataka. It is already inaugurated. Currently the capacity is 2,800 tons per annum, and we can have parallel flow channel also. In such case, we can make it to happen 4,600 tons per annum. And we believe that maybe next year, sir, I'll be able to give you one more assurance. Now I'm giving you 2,800 tons per annum. Maybe next year I'll be able to tell you 10,000 tons per annum. It is a commercial production, commercial manufacturing that is happening in the state of Karnataka. So this is, I'm not telling that we are done with one commitment that you said. We start with this paracetamol. Thank you.
We really appreciate your inspiring and enlightening words, and we take your message forward of becoming leaders in S&T. And Madam has already given one very good example of indigenous production, manufacturing of paracetamol. So, see, sir, to some extent, we live up to your expectation of moving from service economy to a product economy. So, thank you, sir. And now.
Presentation you have? Therefore, you first get it done, then you can show the presentation. Yeah. background. Okay. Exchange. Pilani, yeah. Pilani means you should come. Yeah. Lamp is there. Be careful, be careful. Take the other one also. Come first. Finish all Siri Pilani's thing. Then you go to Siri.
Good morning. This is the technology transfer from CSIO Chennai Center. CSIO, non-intrusive load monitoring system to Hon'ble Technologies. So they are also taking another technology in the name of Peltier-based vaccine cooler. So this is again Saram Textiles Coimbatore under Lab MSME. Let me call upon air quality monitoring system. Yes, sir. So another 3 technologies goes to one company, Matex Exports, Karur. So let me call upon Mr. R. Kaviyananda Bharati, Managing Director. He is taking technology of IoT enabled 3-in-1 power quality, cost effective LPG gas meter for both cylinder and pipelines. And 2 technologies, they are unable to come.
CSIO, Chandigarh, and Electronics Industry Association. Between the 2 organizations, and now we come to the point which we are much more waiting for. We would now request our chief guest, the Honorable Minister of S&T, Dr. Jitendra Singh ji, sir, to please address the gathering.
Good afternoon. Principal Scientific Advisor Professor Ajay Sood, who is also one of the most celebrated scientists from India, I think one of the best known across the world. Dr. Kalai Selvi, our very vibrant Director General whom you heard just now. Mr. Surinder Pal Singh ji, directors of the different labs and institutes, members of the CSIR family, ladies and gentlemen. I think at the outset I have to profusely thank Dr. Kalai Selvi. She, I don't know whether you realize, he said whenever the minister is there, he boosts us. I would like to believe what she says. But more than that, I think the truth is that the minister goes back quite boosted after listening to her. And the second remark she made was that whenever we solicit him, he is there. I think there's a trade secret behind that because I feel flattered to be boosted. And therefore look forward to hear some good words, which of course come in very miserly proportion these days. Even your family members may not have time to talk about you, but it sounds very good that someone like Dr. Kalai Selvi, who is known to talk with evidence, says so, so we believe that he has evidence about what he is saying. And like Professor Sood, I have to compliment you for this 40th birthday of the DSIR, which was born in 1985, and which is actually an extension of the CSIR, one of the regulatory bodies. And Professor Sood was saying it's difficult to figure out what is the relation between the two. I think the pleasant coincidence is that the extended family of this CSIR and DSIR has 3 generations simultaneously surviving. So the CSIR belongs to the grandfather's generation, grandparent generation is now nearing 90, so octogenarian already 85 plus. And the DSIR is the middle-aged one. Now actually having lived through this infancy and since teenage, actually now entering into the 40s and the middle age. And the newer labs that you have every day coming in are perhaps the 3rd generation. And that, I think, also makes an ecosystem on its own, which is not often discussed, often talked about, but it has a huge, huge vibration. And personally, being a member of the part of the same scientific fraternity, I realized the merit of this when the space sector was opened up to the young private participants. We had envisaged the financial supplementation that would happen, but the knowledge supplementation that started happening was actually quite amusing, quite exciting also. Like, for example, when our first startup launched that rocket from Sriharikota, so I asked Sonath, I said, what is there on the top of that satellite? He said, even I can't figure it out. I said, call that boy Pawan. And then he told us, sir, you visualize the launching from the ground. You put in the Doordarshan cameras. We have fitted a camera on the top. So I think because the kind of grooming that the 3rd generation comes from, which is possibly has happened to them in a very natural course, in the course of their growing, which might not happen to the generation that we belong to, because we had to actually adapt. And we've seen the tradition, of course, that has its own merit and its own fascination. So, to that extent, I'm sure this is a day of celebration for all of us. And DSIR, of course, has this autonomous unit of CSIR. It's now a very rich body with 2 PSUs, the NRDC and the CEL. And CEL is, I've always been saying that most of our labs have gone either underrated and, of course, to a great extent, underreported. Only recently, after we started this 1 week, 1 lab. CEL, I don't know how many of you would know. In fact, I was that day in a lighter way telling some of the media personnel, do you know the first solar cell came out from the Central Electronic Limited lab of this institution. And in their language, I was telling you, you remember the year, it was 1977. So I have this fascination of digging out the archives. If you see, dig out the archives of 1977 and go through the newspapers, all through you will find being reported across the year is the change of the government, the coming in of the Janata government, then all the bickerings happening in the Janata government. That was an eventful year when the election was held after emergency. You will not find even a single remote column devoted to this. And that happened when the world hardly knew about the merits of solar energy, way back almost 50 years back. So that is actually the core value of this agency, which is not being realized to an extent. And I'm glad that now we have started, in fact the DSIR was constituted with the focus of synergizing R&D with industry. But possibly we didn't have that kind of a prioritization at the level of the policy planners, at the level of the political dispensation, which Professor Sood was rightly mentioning. Now it started happening after 2014, after the coming in of the Prime Minister Modi. And therefore we have found enough liberty to go in for commercialization of technologies, for transfer of technologies. And this has primarily been because of the concerted patronage and support from the political dispensation, from the Prime Minister himself with his personal indulgence. And I think the manner in which we find ourselves no longer hesitant to engage ourselves in extended collaborations, even in the private sector, which was not so in the government sector till a few years ago. There was a lot of skepticism, a lot of hesitancy, and there was a tendency to play safe by confining yourself to your domain, because so much of regulation and so much of anticipated or unanticipated issues happening as a result of engaging outside the government sector. But I think with the coming in of Prime Minister Modi, that taboo has been broken, and therefore we feel much more encouraged. And when Dr. Kalai Selvi was referring to this first indigenous paracetamol coming out from one of the CSIR institutes and being marketed through the private sector, I think another important point which needs to be noted by all of us, because that is something, if we don't keep talking about ourselves, the others won't talk. Just like, when a guest comes home, you start telling them, "Ye bacha," you start praising your child. "Ye itna acha gana gata hai, bas lata bhi kuch nahi, Rafi." And the guests know that it's not so, but you take fancy. So you have to keep patting your babies, your creations. And therefore, I take pride in saying that even in this third term of the government, this is Modi government 3.0, as it is fancifully referred to by the media, we have had a series of firsts at indigenous from the same ministry. Like she was mentioning about paracetamol coming out from CSIR. In the Department of Biotechnology, which is also the sister organization of the same ministry, we have come out with the first ever indigenously developed antibiotic called nephromycin. And because earlier on, right from the day when Alexander Fleming came out with penicillin, which was known as at that time was referred to as the queen of drugs, all the successive generations of antibiotics, whether it be the streptomycin, which came in somewhere in the early 50s, and the tetracycline, chloromycin, gentamicin, so on and so forth. All the trials were done outside, but this is one drug where the trials were done by our own ministry, Department of Biotechnology, and the marketing is being done by another company called the O-Cards, which is based out of Hon'ble. And this has been found to be very useful across the world in the resistant respiratory infections which happen in immunocompromised hosts like the diabetics or the cancer patients. Similarly, another first also happened for the same ministry, and that too after this government took over for the third time, was that we have come out with the first ever successful trial of gene therapy in a blood disorder called hemophilia. And again, the support was from this ministry through the Department of Biotechnology. The trial clinically was done in Christian Medical College, Vellore. So hemophilia, as many of you would know, is a disorder which happens because of the deficiency of clotting factor 8, as a result of which once there's a trauma or an injury, the bleeding doesn't stop. But here they have already developed up to 60% of the factor in the lab. And yeah, but you will clap again when I say what I'm going to say. Because what I'm saying is not I am saying, as someone part of this. This has been reported only 2 weeks back as a very prominent article in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is in fact of the two oldest medical journals of the world, almost 200 years ago, when the entire medicine was controlled by the United Kingdom before it shifted over to USA somewhere in the middle of 20th century. And you had just two journals. One was the British Medical Journal, the other was the New England Journal. And many of our scientists and researchers of like us, keep dreaming whole life to have one publication at least appearing there. And there it was reported, which means that all the tests and trials have been evidently proved in the favor of this. And similarly, also in the space, of course, I don't have to narrate, we've been so much, we've got into the docking experiment, which also happened very recently. And if you take the year as a whole, even CSIR has more than one success stories. We have the success story of the Purple Revolution, which was mentioned by Prime Minister Modi in Mann Ki Baat, which also was a part of the TEVLU on the 26th January of 2024. We have the hydrogen bus again from NCL, where the paracetamol was tried, biofuels, and then 108 petal tulip from Lucknow, which didn't find a place in media but found a place in Kaun Banega Crorepati. So I said, at least the work is now known and got reported only. And therefore, I think this is also an opportunity for occasions like this to give more visibility to DSIR and to promote some of our programs like IRDP and the various R&D centers. And we need to tell more and more about ourselves, because DSIR is mandated to give accredited registration to the public funded institutions. So that's what you have to tell. When I say engage with industry right from the beginning, why I say so? Because knowledge partnering is no partnering in India at all. I mean, it gives us a fancy, it's a Western concept, knowledge partner. He is my knowledge partner. He shares his knowledge. It doesn't happen in India because knowledge is free here. You sit in a railway compartment, somebody आपको ज्ञान बांटना शुरू हो जाएगा. So unsolicited knowledge partnering happening in this country. There is plenty. You may or may not like it, but he आपको ज्ञान देगा. What matters here is, what pinches here is money. If you make an individual or an agency with 100 rupees, they will make sure that they get back the worth of that each penny spent. And therefore, why I say so is that we need to tell that, look here, if you are doing research, you want exemption on your customs duty for whatever equipment or chemicals or stuff that you wish to import, then you have to be at our doorstep to be obliged. We can also give you exemption, get your exemption from income tax. This is something which is not that widely known as it ought to be. Those of the institutions, some of the prominent IITs, I'm talking only of the 5 original IITs, not the other ones now, because I don't know, the Professor Sood will be better able to comment on that, because I have a different view, which I don't need to speak from the podium. But except for those 2-3 IITs, and of course the Indian Institute of Sciences in Bengaluru, who are already engaged on a continuous basis, many of the institutions are not aware of this. And when we talk of whole of government, when we are talking of NEP 2020, National Education Policy, which allows enough leverage, I think that's another great success story of the Modi government, the National Education Policy, which should have happened. I mean, you are no longer prisoner of the subjects chosen by your parents. You can juggle with your subjects. And there also this, so we tell them that, look here, we can cater to your facilitation of research and make you more viable to market yourself. Then we will have more and more takers. And of course, then we have the DSIR women programs again, because this government has been very forthrightly prioritizing the women-centric programs. So we have an opportunity there as well. Then the common research technology development hubs, we already have them in 15 states. I was going through, I think we already have 18 till now. And they are dedicating to some of the most futuristic areas, like affordable health, like environment, like renewable energy. And these are the areas which are going to sustain our startups. And the rest of the sustainability will come from a larger ecosystem. Now, Dr. Kalai Selvi was referring to budget. So, of course, this government has been more, what shall I say, liberal in allocating budgets to the science ministries. But personally, because being a member of the same ministry, I don't think for a successful research project, one should be too much dependent on the government sources alone. Because most of the success stories across the world have happened with a very limited support from the government. So therefore, I think now the right step has been taken, and again I have to compliment Dr. Ajay Sood, because he was the person working very hard in formulating this National Research Foundation, which I'm sure is going to be one of the best, because we have studied the other such foundations, whether it was the NRC, the US or the Germany, and we've come out with a better version with also including the Indian ethos. And there also you'll have almost 60 to 70% of the resource from the non-government quarters. I mean, if you are looking for a loan to produce a box office film, then you can't have 8 songs and 2 item numbers. And your box office return would also be same. But if you are thinking on a bigger scale, then you have to have a larger pool of resources to look for. Luckily, this government is quite forthcoming. I mean, the manner in which the space sector has been opened up to the private sector is something unimaginable. In fact, the space scientists had reconciled to work like that behind a veil of secrecy. They have even stopped demanding that, because when you know that this is not going to happen, you don't even, that the urge ceases to be alive anymore. So it's, the urge also had ceased to exist. And suddenly then, when it was put across to the Prime Minister, he allowed it, and the results are miraculous just within 3-4 years. So I think now, with the more and more of involvement of the private sector and industry linkage right from the beginning, making them equal partners even financially, with the NRF, and of course the involvement of MSME, the Lagu Udyog, the startups, as she was saying, and the 2025 roadmap that Dr. Kalai Selvi has said before us just now about the technology scale-up initiative. I think the scale-up will also happen when you are not actually limited by the resource. So as you move on, the resource should keep happening. And the other part of it is that you have to keep celebrating your trials, which we are not doing. We get to be celebrated when we have already linked up with the market. So the marketeer is celebrated. India is the first to have come out with a DNA vaccine, but more of celebration happened for the one who marketed. Also got away with all the coveted awards. And then I told Rajesh, I said, why, what were you doing? I said, you are like a script writer who has made the hero and heroine dance, and nobody talks about you. And then of course they are also now getting tuned to it. Similarly, our first herpes virus, HPV, before, and then learning from that lesson, I'm glad, before that institute in Pune could celebrate it, they had already held a function. So I think if you do that, it's not, you are not doing only for publicity. You are doing so also to make the industry realize what you are. And that is the difference. When you're talking of synergizing the private and public sector, we have to learn about all these strategies as well. So why in the private sector also we have today very well developed R&D wings, some of them better than some in the government sector. But why are they more popular or better known? Because they are blowing their own drum. So you have to keep, nobody is going to pat your back. So we have to keep telling people and telling in a voice louder that can be heard, that look here we are doing. Now paracetamol, she said today, but I don't think many know outside. So if we have a selfie point put up at least for 1 week, 50 days before the CSIR gate, first indigenous paracetamol, like that. I'm glad that the Tulip thing did that, and they were very successful. And maybe that's how Crorepati also picked it up. So we others, the market has to know what we have to offer. And I'm glad that 1 week, one theme which I had suggested very hesitatingly to Dr. Kalai Selvi, she was kind enough to take it up, has given some visibility to each of our institutes. Now, I suggested we would have one theme 1 week. So we will also synergize. Like much of this, the life sciences research is being done across the ministries, across the agencies, partly in CSIR, partly in DBT, also to an extent DST, so also the space part of it. We have institutes across, and therefore if we are able to showcase accordingly, I'm sure Professor Sood rightly mentioned when we are talking of Viksit Bharat 2047, we have to ask ourselves where the value is going to be added from. We can't be talking like usual, public speakers, because for them it's a romantic dream. India at the top, 20%. We have to talk, as I said, with evidence. Where are we going to get the value from? So value is going to come from here. It's going to be entirely technology driven. It's going to be entirely bioeconomy driven. And for that, I think CSIR has an opportunity to contribute to that value addition. And then at least proudly say the third generation, because there's a three generation, at least the third generation which enters into the middle age, as DSR is entering today, they will be entering by 47. They might have the opportunity to take pride and say, look here, we also helped in shaping the face of India as it is today. So I think that should be our roadmap for the next 20 years. Thank you once again and good wishes.
Thank you, sir. We take your message seriously in striving hard to become leaders in S&T, taking benefits of DSIR schemes and programs more for the benefit of industry, institutions and academia.
Chief guest of the DSIR Foundation Day function, Honorable Minister of State, Independent Charge for Science and Technology, Dr. Jitendra Singh, respected Professor Ajay Kumar Sood, Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India, respected Dr. N. Kalai Selvi, Secretary DSIR and Director General CSIR, Shri Surinder Pal Singh, Joint Secretary DSIR, esteemed guests from different department, ministries, industries, academia, R&D labs, colleagues from DSIR, CSIR and RDCCL, delegates from Laghu Udyog Bharati Industry Associations, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen. Namaskar and very good afternoon to all of you. It is with the profound sense of gratitude and appreciation that I stand before you today to offer a sincere vote of thanks on this momentous occasion, that is the DSIR Foundation Day. This day marks not only the anniversary of our department but also a celebration of remarkable contributions of our scientists, researchers, administrative officials, staff members and also our collaborators to the advancement of scientific knowledge, technological innovations and its dissemination in the country.